Hello, Nya. My name is Nekomia Sebastian, and I got a couple questions on how I did that pixel art, so I'm going to show you guys how to get that set up here. So first we're going to go Krita, then we're going to show how to do it in Photoshop, and then we'll have a time lapse with some like extra little tips, maybe. Okay, so in Krita, we're going to Control N, also File New. And the first thing is the files, or the screen dimensions. Um, they need to be small for pixel art, so like 32 by 32 is probably a good starting size just to practice. Um, Honestly, you can start even smaller, like 8 by 8 is totally doable. For my sprites, I did this size. So we can create that, and then for the brush, right? We can go to our brushes. Well, actually, it's a lot. So Krita actually has built-in, if you look for pixel art, yeah, has a couple built-in brushes. So this one is just a 1 pixel. That's probably what you want to use. This is for dithering. I don't really do that ever, but if you're like good at pixel art, you probably use that. This is just the 1 pixel, but you can scale it up so it gets bigger. And then there's the same, but it's a square, bigger. I just pretty much only use the pixel, the 1 pixel thing, or that's what I used for the previous drawings. Um, yeah. Okay. So then, say you got your drawing, right? Drew your little drawing here. If you export it, it's gonna be really small and like basically invisible because it's 32 pixels wide. So what you want to do is go to image and then change the scale of the canvas. And so I'd say like 500 or like 700 maybe is a good number, which I can't type. And you see down here is the type of filtering. So this is how it like makes it bigger or smaller. Basically you want to change this to box or like pixel, this one here. And you'll see if you use the default, it gets sort of blurry like this, and the edges are weird, which is another artifact of that, which we don't want. That looks terrible. And of course, if you post this like small image on like Twitter or whatever, it's definitely gonna do that. So we don't want that. So we want to scale it up ourselves. Let's do our 700, whatever arbitrary number, and then it goes on the right. This is how we want it, right? It looks pretty much exactly the same as the small. It just makes it bigger without distorting the edges. Here we get these clean edges, but you see they're a bunch of pixels big. Um, and yeah, and then you can save it, and that's how you do it in Krita. Next is Photoshop. So we're gonna make a new, and same thing. I don't know why it's a weird number. Be normal. Yeah, 32 by 32. Again, the smaller it's just fewer pixels to place. Again, starting with like 8 by 8 or like 16 by 16. The fewer pixels is sort of easier just to get the hang of things, then get bigger once you get the hang of it, I guess. And then for the brush, you see by default we have this big like sort of blurry brush. I'm sure you could change this maybe depending on the brush. That's too hard. I just right click and then pencil. The hardness on this doesn't matter, but the size, at least I think, and the size matters. So make it like a 1 pixel is what I use. And then you can do your little drawing. And then same thing. So we're gonna go to image, image size, and then we'll change it. And then it's at the bottom here. Instead of bicubic, we want nearest neighbor, and that'll make it actually scale correctly. We preserve these nice hard edges here, and it doesn't get all blurry. And then you can post on Twitter or wherever. Yeah, that's all for our how to get it set up. Let's go to some tips and the time lapse. All right, now we're gonna go through some just miscellaneous like tips I guess I have, in no particular order. So the biggest one for me was using references. Obviously use references of like the subject you're trying to paint for your pixel art if you are using that. And you can basically just use the exact same colors if you want, with very minor tweaks, and it'll look really good. But also use references of other pixel art. So if you have a pixel artist whose style you like, for example, in these pieces, I was inspired by like the HoloCure pixel art. As you can tell, sort of, the things like, the head shape, size, the scale of the head versus the body, the way that shading, lightening and darkening is handled. Sort of, you can just gather that from your reference and then apply it to your current piece. So yeah, references are super, and you'll see me scrolling through here, scrolling through the references I used for these pieces. Yeah, never be afraid to use references, and just you know don't copy them pixel for pixel, but you can say, okay, the head is this big, so you start with that, and then you say, okay, the eyes look like this sort of, they're more of a square with a line here and here. And you can also mix and match, right, from different pixel art references that you like. So you say, oh, I like the eyes from this one. I like the hair shading from this one, and sort of mix and match and get a good feeling going. Okay, the next thing is breaking up symmetry. So unless you're making like a mechanical, a helicopter or like a building or something that is robotic or like unnatural in nature, yeah, don't make it. Or I think avoiding symmetry can help you basically, just to make it look more natural. So if you have two cat ears, for example, make them in different poses, right? Don't just have them in the same. Don't just have them be a flip horizontal of each other, right? Make them significantly different, right? There's two of them. Make a reason for that to be the case, so maybe one ear can be like flipped down a little bit or at a steeper angle perhaps. A slightly different, the colors are arranged slightly differently, and this just adds visual interest and makes it not look just like sort of stiff and cardboard. It makes it look like a real sort of fluid and a natural object. And building on that, we have breaking up large shapes. So if you have a large area of like a single color, it can be good to break it up, depending on where it is, obviously. So for example, if you have a huge like maid clothes and you have that huge white part on the bottom of the what is that, the apron maybe, and that's just a big block of white, but it's sort of like a point of interest, I would say, and you don't want it to be sort of a boring just square like white rectangle, so in addition to like adding edges and making it sort of you know the edge or the shape itself not being symmetrical, adding stuff like shading or details can again make that area more interesting and also more natural, and it won't draw away from the detail level of the rest of the image. So like if you have a really detailed area in like the face or the eyes or the hair, for example, and that isn't matched throughout the rest of the pixel art, it can kind of be a little off-putting, at least I think. So sort of matching the general detail level and only having minor differences for areas you want focused on more. So like the eyes, as you can see, I use a bunch of different colors for the eyes, whereas maybe only a few shades for the other parts of the dress or the clothes or whatever. But those areas are still interesting to look at on their own. So they're a little less detailed, but they still are detailed and still are interesting in their own right. So yeah, definitely breaking up those large shapes can help a lot. And finally, I got not using a color palette necessarily, but being consistent with your colors. So this should come as no surprise to anybody making like actual art. It's or not actual, but you know what I mean, like non-pixel art. Using like a color palette can help a lot, right? So if you have two colors that are very similar and basically the same color, just make them one color. There's no reason for them to be different. And especially in pixel art, sort of accentuating the contrast there, I find to be very pleasing to look at. So certainly, yeah, I think that's a huge one, making it, big contrast. Instead of having many like little colors, use a few bold colors. So like for the dress, instead of having a bunch of shades of white, use a bright white and a dull white, right? Or for the hair, have like the base color, the highlight, and the shading, right? There's no reason to make it any more than that, unless you have ears, then it gets sort of crazy, but like animal ears. But yeah, other than that, certainly using a color palette can help. If you're drawing from an existing character, certainly you'll have a palette with which to work, so that's already there for you. So anyway, hope this was helpful, and good luck making your pixel arts. Bye bye. Bye, nya.